them is that we exist for only one reason. We fight for only one reason. We struggle and sacrifice for only one reason. And that is for the people. Yes. For the people. First and foremost. And we will not be led down paths. We will not allow people to convolute and twist and talk about they're going to introduce some little three-part bill. All right. You know, we're not going to play with that. We're not going to talk about some kind of Democratic-led bill that would not address the issue of ex-felon disenfranchisement. Are they kidding us? All right. I mean, these are the issues. This is the battle. So, yes, we're in a different struggle. Last year, we were trying to get rid of a horrible administration that had harmed our people deeply, disastrously. It will be decades of problems from what happened. We were hoping for better through however the people vote, that we would have better. And now we have a situation where people think they can operate in a way without accountability to us. Yes. So it is imperative as we talk about what we're going to do next year, that's at the forefront of our mind is that we must do everything in our power to bring accountability. Yesterday, Reverend Barber said what? In his speech, he talked about the need for disruption, the need to concentrate power on where we are. So we're doing better, right, than we were doing a couple of months ago. What was happening a couple of months ago, just in case you forgot them? They were saying no for the people act. That's right. Forget about it. That's right. Nice idea. But it ain't happened. And we brought pressure on them and said, that's not acceptable. So they're not saying that anymore. Now they're saying, well, you know, we gotta know, we gotta get a vote, whatever. And we're like, you know, please stop playing. Because you either got 10 Republican votes or you break the filibuster. There's no other alternative. Everything else is a joke. Anything short of that is unrealistic. So that's what we're trying to do in this moment. That's where we are. And I turn it over to Daryl Jones. All right.
Trying to find a place where we can work with this microphone and the system that's there. I'm not going to amplify like Barbara can amplify, and Reverend Jackson sometimes amplifies and everything else. But there's some information that I think is very important that we understand in the challenge and where we are in this challenge today. And you know, in order to truly, I think, understand it, sometimes we have to understand what it is that we've come through to understand where it is that we are. And when I say that, what I mean by that is this. When we came into 2020, in that 2020 election, no one was looking at the African American community and saying there's something to fear that's going on there. It was quite the opposite. Because if that was the case in 2020, everything that you see happening now in 2021, all this legislation, would have been put in place then.
Yes, that's right.
They did not see it coming.
Right.
And what has occurred in 2020 is that you saw a coalition of African American organizations come together and work with African American community, work with young community, work across the divide to turn out a vote during the middle of the pandemic.
Yes.
What happened from that point? What happened from that point is what I think is very interesting. is what happens during that pandemic is that, what is the statement sometimes, what man means for evil, God changes
For good.
In the middle of that pandemic, what you saw happen was that you saw the African American community, the Latino community, the young community begin to understand the value of that vote and the significance of that vote. What you also started to see happen was this accessibility of the vote become more accessible to people. That so it became easier to vote. You had the drop boxes. If you worked late, you could go to a drop box and drop it off. You could made it more easy for you to be able to use a vote by mail. So the whole concept of the premise of what I argue the democratic process is all about, is being able to vote, was coming into fruition.
Yes.
And what happened from there is where is responsible for where we stand now, in my opinion. Exactly. Because what happened from there, focus became on Georgia. When we went down to Georgia, and we had drop boxes all over the place, and we were all over Georgia telling folks, this is when you just take it to the drop box. It's over 24 hours. Take it to the drop box. Put it in the drop box. Don't want to go to the drop box? You can walk it in early. Take it in early and put it. Follow the votercade to the polling place and put it in. Cast your ballot. State of Georgia went as far as, and Ellen Butler knows I love this story. State of Georgia went as far as to have this huge RV out of, I believe it was Fulton County. Yeah. And this RV was a voting RV. Everything you'd have in a polling place, you'd have in the RV. And the RV could go to any of the communities in that county. That's right. And have people going up and exercise that right to vote. Well, what happened from all of this? Well, you had all of this accessibility that went on. And after you had all of this accessibility that went on, and they saw the results of some of these really southern parts of Georgia, Lakely County, down in southeast Georgia, okay? And some of those more rural areas. And you had black folks and Latino folks coming out to vote. It turned Georgia around. And those that were in power in the state of Georgia said, we can't have this. We need to slow this down because this African American community, this young community, this Latino community, we got to slow this down. We're gonna lose power if we don't. So what happened from there, and Barbara Arnwine and certainly Helen Butler will tell you the story, is that as we were going around this, all of us were going around the state and doing things to encourage voters to come out, feeding folks in food deserts that were there that were coming out to vote, whether they were voting or not, just having the food stuff available. Right. The Secretary of State in Florida then issues an edict and says, in Georgia, issues an edict.
Illegal edict.
That says, if I see anybody give anyone in line for 5-6 hours, however long it may be, as much as a cup of coffee, I'm going to lock them up.
And it wasn't even in line. It was anywhere within 100 feet of a polling place.
So what that indicates is that what was working in Georgia was becoming very effective. Right. Because it wasn't interfering, it wasn't influencing how a person voted, but it was encouraging people to come to the polls to vote. It was following that 2021 voter turnout that you saw this slew of legislation come across the states across this country. It started in Georgia,